Well, welcome everyone. It's the top of the hour. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world. You have joined the WWF and FIDIC and WWF Nepal webinar on the Nature Positive Infrastructure Playbook. We're going to get the webinar underway. So, very warm welcome to you. I'm excited to be joined by a fantastic group of people to discuss this critical interaction between the natural world and infrastructure. By way of background on myself, I am Robert Spencer. I lead the ESG advisory practice at AECOM, and I'm also on the Sustainable Development Committee for FIDIC and was the executive sponsor at AECOM for developing the Nature Positive Infrastructure Playbook. And I've enjoyed a long working relationship now with our colleagues from WWF and FIDIC to really transform how we think about the relationship between nature and infrastructure and how both can benefit from really understanding one another better and developing approaches, techniques, applications that are going to lead to a better world. So with that, I'm going to go around the room and ask the various experts who are joining us for this session to give a sort of 30-second to 1 minute introduction to themselves so that you all know who you're listening to. And after that, we'll get into some more detailed introductory remarks from FIDIC Vice President, from the Asia Pacific representative for FIDIC, and from Kate at WWF. And then we'll have a moderated session, which I will lead with Evan, Emily, and Basma, who've all been closely involved in the development of the playbook. We'll have some reflections on that discussion from Mr. Thakur of SkyF Nepal and also from Mary at USAID. And on that note, I'd just like to acknowledge the grateful support of USAID in developing this further iteration of the playbook through the Align project. And you'll hear much more about Align from Kate and from Mary in her reflections at the end, and how we think this is going to be a really powerful process for developing nature positive outcomes from infrastructure development, not only in Nepal, but scaled and replicated across other jurisdictions in the world. So it's an exciting hour and a bit ahead. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. I'm going to begin by asking Alfredo, who's to my immediate right, to introduce himself and give it 30 seconds. Alfredo, give us who you are and what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Alfredo Ingletti from Rome, Italy, and I'm the founder and chairman of an engineering company run here in Italy, it's 3TI Progetti, and also for the time being, vice president of FIDIC. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfredo. I'll move around my screen. Evan, you come up next, Evan Freund.
Thank you, Robert. Good to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Freund. I'm a Senior Director for Sustainable Infrastructure and Finance at WWF US and have been part of the relationship and development of the playbook alongside FIDIC and AECOM. Great to be here again. Thanks.
You're very welcome, Evan. And sticking with the WWF team, I'll come to you next, Kate.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Kate Newman. I'm the Vice President for Sustainable Infrastructure at WWF US, where we are hosting the Align project, which I'll describe in a little while. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kate. And now to a home team member, Emily. Introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Robert. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Lecornu. I work for AECOM with Robert, and I was one of the authors and managed the development of the Nature Positive Infrastructure Development Playbook. Sorry, a bit of a mouthful there, but we'll provide a bit more detail on this document a little later on. But lovely to meet you all and be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Emily. And moving to FIDIC, well, welcome to you, Basma. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Basma Isa. I'm head of policy, ESG and sustainability at FIDIC, and I'm an economist by background, specialized in green economy and sustainability. Good to be here today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good. I'm just going to wipe my screen across and see if I can spot anyone else. I can't see anyone else on screen on my screen, but that might be a problem with my app. Aha, there he is. He's appeared. Sudhir, do do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. I am Sudhir Dhawan, President of FIDIC Asia Pacific, based in New Delhi. We are a regional group of FIDIC, having 23 member countries and very active. Everybody is participating in our programs. Thank you, Robert.
Fantastic, Sudhir. Good stuff. And we'll be coming back to you in a couple of minutes to say a bit more about your role in the Asia Pacific and FIDIC and the link to the Playbook. And last but by no means least, our representative from USAID, Mary, you're very welcome. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Greetings, everyone. I work with the USAID's Asia Bureau, and I lead the Division for Environmental Security and Resilience and work alongside WWF on wildlife-friendly infrastructure. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great. Well, I think, unless I've unfortunately missed anyone, I don't think I have. I think that's everyone introduced. As I say, we've got a great panel and discussion pointers here from the team. We're going to move into the first part of the conversation, which is some introductory remarks from three of our guests who you just heard from in the introductions. We're going to hear from Alfredo from FIDIC, and he'll be followed up by Sudhir from FIDIC in the Asia Pacific region, based out in New Delhi, as you just heard. And then we'll come to Kate from WWF to give her remarks as well. So Alfredo, if you want to come off mute, I'll come to you first, and you can make your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you to all of you that are attending to this webinar today. That is very, very important to get everyone on this page, because the playbook that is going to be shown and discussed today is a critical pointer into the work done by FIDIC with the help of WWF and the support from Robert AECOM and the team. And because this is for sure one of the most important, or probably the most important topic to be addressed for the time being by our industry. Our role as engineers is fundamental in this path, because we are the ones who get the directions to all the industry to reach the target. The target is very challenging. We know that this is also a matter of money, of funds to be available to manage this, because it's for sure especially in the short term, to reach this goal is challenging, but not only in terms of technologies and of support from the consultants, from the engineers, but also by the support of government, as far as we need the government to make bigger efforts in financing the transition into a nature positive. It's a good word used to explain the target, because to be nature positive means that we are going to give a positive support, to give an added value to the world and to the changes that are made by the great infrastructure and connection between people is the starting point of democracy, the starting point of well-being. And so we need to get the people more connected every day. And this not only in the Western countries, the industrialized countries, but everywhere in the world. But to connect needs infrastructure, and infrastructure normally gets an impact on the environment. It gets an impact in the world. So our role is fundamental, I repeat, because we are in charge to get this impact positive and not to impact in a negative way. But it needs money. So we are here today to collect our ideas, and the role of FIDIC as the global voice of engineering is to get all your suggestions, all your thoughts and to put it at a higher scale, to go to the decision makers and to stress the needs of resources to address this point. This is important, and how better we can explain the problems and the solution, because the playbook, it's in my opinion a great result, because it's not only listing the problems but also trying to get on board solutions, because this is the most important thing. We have to go to the decision makers with solution, not with problems. Otherwise, we will receive only, okay, I have problems like you, let's collect together and cry together. No, we have to get on board solutions. And I think that this is the right way to go. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining this webinar. But more to join in the discussion and to give your value to the continuous improvement of these activities. And obviously, thank you to all the people that gave their work to make it possible. And thank you, Robert. I will listen to the discussion with great interest.
Alfredo, thank you so much for those warm and insightful remarks you just made there about the interaction between the engineering profession and the infrastructure development process and the natural world. I think you touched on the absolutely vital issues there. And I agree, there can be no time for admiring the problem, as we say sometimes. It's all about what are the solutions, how do we get those underway, and how do we scale and replicate them as quickly as we can to really make that positive impact. So really appreciate your thoughts. I'm going to come now to my second speaker, who is going to give his introductory remarks on the topic, and that's Sudhir Dhawan. Sudhir sits with me on the Sustainable Development Committee for FIDIC, and he's also the Asia Pacific representative for FIDIC and has a successful engineering consultancy business out of New Delhi. So he has some really interesting insights into the FIDIC process and the local process and how nature infrastructure are getting along, shall we say, in your part of the world, Sudhir. So over to you for your remarks on the topic, please.
Thank you, Robert. I think it's a great event to launch the playbook. It's a very interesting book. I went through that, not in detail, but in general, I went through every topic, every sector has been covered, and which is not easy. And thanks, Robert, and your team for producing such a wonderful book with the help of WWF. And what I find most interesting is the solutions are also mentioned in some areas, but the most difficult task will be the implementation, and how to implement, who will follow, all that will happen. Now, that is about the playbook. I think we have to continue working on this, put in new ideas, new thoughts, new areas, and we are going to do this for FIDIC Asia Pacific members also. And due to Ivan's initiative last year, we have now signed an MOU with WWF India for the Align project. And this is a very interesting development, and we are going to now work on this in a big way and collaborate, train people, give some site inspections in forest areas or where the animals are moving. So that will be an interesting thing we are going to do in future. But for infrastructure development, India is still far behind, and I think most of the developing countries are also still far behind in following the nature-specific requirements to safeguard the nature. India is slowly changing, but I think it will take a lot of time still to do that. We have now introduced this subject in the National Highway Authority of India, and we are saying that at the DPR stage itself, there should be a requirement to follow the natural guidelines to safeguard the nature. Now, this will take time, but it is going to happen. And I'm sure this will be the case with many of the developing countries. And slowly we have to impart this message to everybody. In the Sustainable Development Committee meetings, I learned quite a bit from Robert, and I told Robert that the main task will be to train the trainers. And Robert, we have to still work on that because people are still not aware. And in our annual conference in Bangkok in November, we had a big session on this topic. What change should be done in the consultancy profession? What should be changed and how it should be changed, and to take care of climate change impact in our designs. I must tell you that we are going to have an annual conference in Nepal in November this year of FIDIC Asia Pacific. And again, the topic is governance of impact on climate shocks. How do we govern? Who will govern when the climate shocks come? And we are noticing now the climate change is impacting all over the world in a very, very bad way. Recently, Papua New Guinea had huge landslides due to which many people died. So it's a difficult task ahead of us, but we have to all gear up. We have to all prepare and keep on doing what we can and keep on educating people, for engineers especially, who are the forefront of development in any country and every project. Thank you, Robert. With these few words, I hand over back to you.
Thank you so much, Sudhir. Good to hear your remarks there. And I think you touched on one of the key things there, the interaction between climate and nature and infrastructure, and the fact that nature is so important for regulating the climate. When we impact it through our infrastructure, we dysregulate the natural system, which of course has a repercussion on the ability of nature to help us with climate mitigation and climate adaptation. So thank you for bringing in the climate topic. And I think if we can get this right, if you can get nature positive infrastructure right, you're actually getting multiple benefits. You're hopefully seeing some enhancement of nature or recovery of nature, and hopefully with that you're seeing the ability of nature to perform its regulatory functions in the way only nature can. So thank you for bringing up that important twist in the tail. Look, we're coming on to our third and final introductory remarks from Kate. So Kate, you're going to give us the WWF download. Let's hear it. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. Thanks very much, Robert. Yes, actually, I'm also going to introduce Align properly, the host of this event. Align is Asia's linear infrastructure safeguarding, with the G, nature, and is funded by the United States Agency for International Development, who is a longtime partner to WWF and the conservation community on supporting biodiversity conservation in Asia and around the world. And we'll hear some more from Mary Melnick, our partner on this at USAID at the end of the discussion. Align is focused in 3 countries, Nepal, India, and Mongolia, and it aims to provide information and capacity Asia-wide. So the focus of the project is on expanding the adoption and strengthening the implementation of high-quality safeguards that can protect biodiversity and people's livelihoods while we develop the linear infrastructure that connects people and economies across this region. So by linear infrastructure, we're referring to infrastructure that runs through a landscape, such as roads, railways, power lines. These are highly impactful on biodiversity and do have a significant contribution to climate change and what we hope to mitigating climate change as we develop these with better practices. So one of the cool opportunities that's emerged for us in this project is this fantastic relationship with FIDIC. This community represents the consulting engineers, which is one of, as was just pointed out, one of the key players in the life cycle of developing infrastructure. And so WWF and FIDIC entered into a partnership about 3 years ago to address together the challenge of enabling engineers to have state-of-the-art information on advancing the future of infrastructure that will actually restore our climate and our world's biodiversity, both of which are, as has been pointed out, on some sort of downslide, but we can, and we believe together we can come up with the solutions to address these challenges and push things back up into the other direction. And so we're achieving this as a start through the Playbook, which we'll describe today. And the Align project is actually helping put the spotlight on Asia specifically. Asia is the region where that's experiencing the most infrastructure growth and will continue to do so in the coming decades. And so as a critical region of the world to be addressing these issues. And what we are so pleased to see today with SCAF is the opportunity to bring this partnership into a national level and continue the dialogue with you, which I had the great pleasure of experiencing when I was visiting the Align project in Nepal recently. We spent well more than 2 hours discussing the intricacies of integrating these issues into your practices. So we commend SCAF's commitment towards sustainable infrastructure development, and the partnership that WWF locally has with SCAF will continue into the coming years. And what we would like to do is see this webinar help you understand the issue and let us hear more from you what it would take to make this really work, what we need to be doing to ensure that the Playbook is practical and helpful for you, and how we can actually continue to grow this, because we consider this Playbook a living document, and we'll be incorporating information into it on a web-based platform in the coming weeks and months and years. And so your input and your practical vision of what's really needed on the ground is going to be super helpful for us. And we hope that this information will help you as you move forward on promoting and supporting and delivering sustainable infrastructure in Nepal. So thanks for having us. We look forward to this discussion. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Kate, very much for outlining the relationship between WWF and USAID and the importance of the Align project. The focus on linear infrastructure came through loud and clear there. And we know how important linear infrastructure can be, both as a disruptor of nature, but also there is potential for that connectivity along the linear infrastructure footprint to hopefully give some major positive back into the system. And I think that's one of the things that we need to work a lot more on. That brings us to a close of the opening remarks from Alfredo and Sushil and Kate. We're now going to get into the meat of the webinar, where you actually hear how the Playbook came about, how it got developed, what its purpose is, and the current developments of the Playbook and how they're being applied in different contexts. And in order for us to achieve that outcome during the next few minutes, we've got Evan and Emily and Basma, who you heard from in the introductions, to talk to some of those points. So what I'm going to do is ask them really difficult questions, and they're going to do their best. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to ask them some questions about how these things took place, how things got underway, what was the story behind it, so you understand how an important piece of documentation, which was a really powerful guide for the infrastructure community, came about. What was the idea behind it? What was the impetus? Why did this occur at this time and place? So I'm going to start with you, Evan. You're bringing the WWF side of the story, if you like. Give us a few minutes on the importance of the new, relatively new still, relationship between FIDIC, representing the global engineering, infrastructure engineering community, and WWF, timeless understanding of nature, and everyone knows how important your work is. How did it come about, that relationship between FIDIC and WWF, and what was the impetus for it? And in addition to the Playbook, which we're discussing now, are there future plans as the relationship strengthens between the infrastructure engineering consulting world and the nature conservation and preservation world?
Sure. Thanks again, Robert, and thanks to all of you for joining. Yeah, a little over 3 years ago, FIDIC and WWF entered into a dialogue. This was actually just prior to COP26, and FIDIC were in the early days of developing a very comprehensive climate charter, which I encourage everybody on this call to check out on FIDIC's site, and I'm sure Basma will speak to it in greater detail. But following an initial conversation, there was almost instant recognition that the two organizations shared mutual interests in a number of topics related to sustainable infrastructure. Those included the incorporation of nature-based solutions, the promotion of natural infrastructure, or the development of hybrid solutions to deliver infrastructure services. And I think at the same time, we recognized that each institution just had tremendous global reach. Each of the previous speakers have sort of alluded to the power strengths of our respective institutions, but it seemed like a natural fit. FIDIC represents thousands of engineering firms globally, millions of individual engineers who work for those firms, really has global distribution and has set the standard, frankly, through the development and deployment of its various forms of contracts, I should say, for infrastructure development and civil works, large civil works projects globally. WWF at the same time has been really focused on a suite of issues related to the intersection between infrastructure development and conservation for quite some time, particularly aimed at or focused on the early stage development of infrastructure, policy formulation, early stage planning, financing, and development. When the key decisions around nature conservation, biodiversity preservation, and climate can be made and influenced before a tender document is released and before a project actually begins. And again, it was quite early in our conversations with FIDIC that we realized each institution brought quite a bit of expertise and quite a bit of reach into a very important topic that's still very much emerging, and that's incorporating nature and nature positive elements into infrastructure design and development. And what came from those early conversations, Robert, you were a part of those along with other members of the Sustainable Development Committee, was this recognition that there's quite a bit of work that we could do together. We signed a memorandum of understanding, which was quite broad in nature, agreeing that, again, as each institution, we could bring our respective resources to bear on a number of very difficult and interesting challenges. The first product was the Playbook, which we're discussing today. And it seems in hindsight like a really natural first product. And it was from the insight and discussions with the Sustainable Development Committee that we recognized the engineering community. FIDIC's members were really calling for this. And this is what I think is really interesting and quite innovative, perhaps about the Playbook. One of FIDIC's strengths is its role in representing the consulting engineering community globally. And in our conversations with the community, it was very clear that the engineering community is looking for, is eager for, and is interested in learning more about tools, methods, and ways to incorporate NBS or nature positive solutions into traditional infrastructure development. There are other pieces of literature out there. There are other guidebooks on nature-based solutions. There are guidebooks on sustainable infrastructure. But I'm not sure there's anything that's yet been developed until the Playbook that really focuses on or operates as a sort of living handbook for the engineering community, for practitioners in the infrastructure space to think about how to incorporate nature positive approaches into infrastructure development. So again, what's emerged is this Playbook. And as Kate alluded to, it's the partnership with FIDIC has been tremendous between WWF and FIDIC. We see it manifesting in various forms at regional, national, international levels. The Playbook is very much meant to be an evergreen document. And that's why we do events like the one we're doing now. We'd love to hear from you as FIDIC members, as practitioners in the space, about how this Playbook actually works in the day-to-day development of your work and your jobs. And that's why it's so case study oriented. And Emily will speak to the construct of the Playbook a bit more. But I'll just close by saying I'm quite pleased that we have such a robust partnership between WWF and FIDIC. I'm very grateful to AECOM for its contributions and work in developing now 2 versions of the Playbook, and look forward to seeing how this is incorporated into the practice of engineering moving forward. So thanks, Robert, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Evan. Really good to get that background and the insights on the relationship with FIDIC. I think a lot more to come. It's an exciting time, that nexus between nature and infrastructure. Now let's get into the details of the Playbook a little bit. For those of you who may not be so familiar with it, you're going to be hearing from the lead author, Emily, who will tell you a little bit about how the Playbook was developed, how it was prepared, and also perhaps, Emily, as Evan just hinted at, if you could touch on some of the key learnings from the case studies that you assembled in your remarks, that would be super helpful to give the audience a bit of an insight into what you discovered during your analysis and preparation of the guidance.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen the playbook, we'll make sure that we post a link to it in the chat, so you have some time after this call to work your way through it. And as Evan and Kate have already mentioned, we always welcome feedback on how it can be improved and made into a document that is practically useful for practitioners to deliver their work and to incorporate nature-based solutions, nature positive infrastructure solutions into their designs going forward. So the document is very much, as Evan mentioned, a living document. We prepared the first version, which is the one that's currently published early last year, and launched it at the FIDIC conference in Singapore. And this document, what it aims to do in its current form is to help raise awareness to practitioners in this space of the alternative solutions available, so trying to kind of change the mindset away from going down the kind of traditional grey infrastructure route to incorporating possibly kind of alternative solutions. And as we were developing this document, what we found and struggled and spent actually a lot of time kind of deliberating with WWF and FIDIC is how to best present all the information that's out there, and we settled on a structure focusing on sectors, then looking at kind of the benefits, and then finally kind of the solutions. So we undertook quite a significant kind of desk-based review to identify kind of all the different types of, well, from our desk-based research, the types of kind of solutions that were available. And then we presented that information under those three different lenses. So we first took the sector approach. So we, from the kind of the project examples that we identified, we categorized them into kind of high-level sectors, the high-level sectors of transport, energy, water and wastewater, buildings and public spaces, and coastal protection. Now, these were the kind of sector breakdowns that worked for this version of the report. Things might change in the future, and I know people kind of categorize sectors kind of slightly differently, but for the kind of purposes of presenting the information from a sector base, we felt that kind of high-level sector kind of breakdown worked the best. And then recognizing that within those kind of high-level sectors, there's kind of multiple subsectors. So we developed a typology that kind of broke down the solutions into different subsectors to make it more relevant to the user of the report to access the information that they really needed. So if I take the transport sector, for example, you'll notice that whenever you look through that chapter, we've broken down solutions in terms of inland, road and rail, coastal highways and roads, aviation, ports and maritime transport, and then also urban roads. So really it's trying to kind of help the reader kind of access the kind of information that's really kind of relevant for them. The next chapter of the document kind of looked at it from a benefits perspective. So I'm sure many of you are aware of the kind of the amazing co-benefits of nature positive infrastructure solutions and what they bring. And so what we tried to do is kind of break down the different solutions in terms of kind of the biodiversity, carbon and resilience. So those were the key benefits that we tried to draw out. And then we also looked at kind of an additional benefits kind of perspective. So kind of the wider environmental, the economic, and also the social benefits that solution could bring. And then finally, what we did was we presented the solutions by solutions. So provided a little bit more information on kind of what it actually meant, what do all the different types of projects actually mean, and gave some examples of where they've been implemented in practice, what some of the challenges were in the implementation. And now I caveat all of this by saying that it's a very high level presentation of those solutions, because that's all that we wanted this document to do, is we wanted to raise the awareness of what was available and how, and then a signpost to additional information that reader could then read up about kind of the projects that we identified, or could look at the other great kind of information kind of documents that have been published by other organizations as well. So yeah, so it's a signpost and kind of raising awareness document. And then we've also got another section in there that kind of provides kind of guides to standards and policies as well, in case the reader and user would like to know information there. What we've what I should have said at the start is that the document kind of starts off with our introduction and really kind of sets the scene as kind of what is included in scope and what isn't included in scope. Because nature-based solutions, nature-positive infrastructure solutions, there isn't a kind of a commonly kind of agreed definition, which is one of the challenges for this space. And so what we have done is set our own definition at the start to kind of make it clear kind of what's included and what's not in this document. So yeah, it's been put together from a lot of desk-based research where we kind of reviewed, I think it was over 200 projects. Well, I think it was 500 projects in total that we looked at. And then narrowed it down into 200 that have been built into a database. And as Evan and Kate kind of alluded to before, it's quite exciting that we're going to be developing this into a kind of an online system where people can be able to filter the types of projects and get more information on specific solutions to help in their day-to-day work. To answer your final query, kind of, Robert, I suppose the kind of the learnings from this research and from all this work that we undertook, I think there's quite a lot of kind of takeaway points, but the key ones, the 4 ones that I'd kind of like to leave the audience with, and these are kind of highlighted in the report as well, are one, so whilst nature positive infrastructure development may be high on the agenda, you know, might be talked about an awful lot. I think it's received quite a lot of airtime in the last kind of couple of years. To date, we haven't got that strong kind of evidence base and kind of database of projects. I mentioned the kind of the 200, which, you know, sounds like an impressive number, but this is globally, you know, this is globally that we're talking about, which I suppose when we went into the exercise, perhaps a little naively, we thought there'd be a much bigger list to kind of like draw on and to build from. So I suppose what's needed and what kind of like highlights what's highlighted there is that the need to kind of really kind of focus more effort into kind of identifying kind of more solutions and raising awareness of what's available globally so that it can be implemented and replicated elsewhere. The second is whilst there has also been considerable interest in nature-based solutions to replace certain functions of grey traditional infrastructure, there seems to be a bit of an implementation bias on certain solutions. So we've seen quite a lot of projects kind of focused on reforestation, the restoration of wetlands, or sustainable kind of urban drainage systems. So there's quite a number of examples there, but then there's a lot of other kind of subsectors that have very few projects or little innovation, which is it's a massive gap in the space to really kind of drive forward and meet our global, national, regional kind of climate and nature goals. We really need kind of more effort focused on practitioners to come up with these innovative solutions and help unlock opportunities in underserved subsectors. The third, and it's quite a biggie, and is really understanding the full range of the benefits that nature positive infrastructure solutions bring. So, you know, really kind of spending more time on kind of measuring, quantifying kind of what these benefits are. I think there's a bit of a gap at the moment to be able to really kind of use it as a tool to stand up against kind of traditional grey infrastructure solutions, which have had a lot of research and have a lot of that data already available. And then finally, and it kind of, I suppose, it's sort of similar to kind of some of the points I've already mentioned, is this need to kind of continually build this evidence base of solutions to continually share information. So the playbook is a small step in the right direction. You know, it's raising awareness of what's available, but really we need kind of information sharing, knowledge sharing to be much more prevalent, because at the moment, well, we struggle to find a lot of information on certain projects. So, you know, others, wouldn't want to be in an engineer's shoes having to design a project with such little information kind of publicly available to draw on. So it's really this kind of awareness raising, this knowledge sharing, this kind of unlocking of information to help drive the rollout of these types of solutions on large infrastructure projects going forward across the world.
Emily, really good to get that much deeper background now on the insights from the research, and also some of the key takeaways for the infrastructure community. And clearly you empathize quite a bit with the infrastructure engineers in terms of how they need to grapple with nature. And we made a start. We scratched the surface there with the playbook and setting the scene, providing the sector-specific insights. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's different about, or what's the additional elements that we're covering in the second edition of the playbook?
Gosh, thank you for the reminder. So yes, I mentioned we released the first version of the report with the WWF and FIDIC last year, which went down really well. And then we at the launch event, we heard from some of FIDIC's member base on areas of improvement and what additional information is needed. And one of the key requests was looking at the infrastructure life cycle and at what stages nature positive infrastructure could be included and could be brought in to the discussion. And so we've done just that. So we've written a new chapter focusing on the early stages of the infrastructure life cycle to identify the entry points for NPS, nature positive infrastructure, to help unlock barriers from a design perspective, from a procurement perspective, and help almost take you to just before the financing as well. So we don't go into too much detail on that side, because that's a whole different research piece that's needed. But yeah, so the aim is to help from a slightly different angle, so less from the engineering perspective, but possibly the other actors that also need to be involved in decision making at that early stage. And what we've also done is have a bit of an outreach to the FIDIC membership community, and also online as well, for a call for case studies to try and gather more evidence and showcase these innovative solutions that are being implemented around the world. So in this next iteration of the playbook, which is live and will continue hopefully to be updated as we go forward, and innovation new innovation comes out, and we can demonstrate best practice in other ways, will continue to be so that's the next version, is this new chapter and additional case studies to draw on. Now, whilst unfortunately the window for case studies for this next iteration has now closed, that's not to say that we're not accepting any more. We'd love to hear from those on the call who have projects that they have implemented or in the process of implementing, that they are incorporating nature positive infrastructure into their design, and so that we can talk about it. We can tell others, this is a global outreach, this document. So you'll be able to get information on your project disseminated quite widely. So yeah, always welcome new projects. So thank you.
Emily, fantastic. Good stuff there. And I'm not sure whether I'm picking up the right vibe, but I got a bit of a hint that perhaps the next piece of work's around the business case, and bringing together the engineering and the nature experts to actually help the financiers get their heads around how they can get into this, because it's a complex area, right? And I think it merits another hard look. With that, I'll come to Basma. If you want to unmute Basma, you're representing the FIDIC corporate team, if you like, here. What are your feelings here on what would you like the FIDIC membership to do with the playbook? What do you want the community to take from it, and how do you want them to utilize the knowledge and practice that's being shared through the playbook?
Thank you, Robert. Well, the playbook being the pivotal resource for driving sustainable infrastructure development, as we want it to be, we would love to see our members and the vast stakeholders and everyone reading it, adopting it, and implementing it to start with. So since It is a comprehensive guide, provides actionable insights, methodologies for integrating nature-based solutions into infrastructure projects. And this would be the first step, is to find them adopting and implementing it. We would encourage our members to adopt the best practices in their ongoing and future projects. For the whole life cycle of the project. So from the very beginning, from the design process up until the end users. And we want everyone to be, this to be a collaboration. So everyone to be involved, local communities, not just the engineers. And by doing that, we can collectively enhance the environmental sustainability of the infrastructure development. And the first step being adopting and implementing it. The second step would be the collaboration. So we want it also to be shared. It would be a shared knowledge. They can use it as a great foundation for training and capacity building initiatives. It can start internally within their own organizations. They can conduct workshops, webinars, training sessions, as I believe it can disseminate the knowledge in a great way that's in the playbook, and this is how that can help them to start by sharing the knowledge internally and taking it then up to their external stakeholders. It will empower engineers and project managers, everyone with the skills and the understanding necessity to implement nature positive solutions effectively. And I think this also relates to what Emily was saying earlier, that part of not understanding the benefits and co-benefits that come with the nature positive infrastructure solutions is why it's not easily implemented, because people lack the knowledge. So promoting the knowledge and sharing it would be a great step for our members. I think also that we would like to see the playbook used as a tool for advocacy. And again, for what Emily was saying, the more than 200 projects provide evidence-based case studies. We lacked the evidence-based case studies before, and these examples can help make a great compelling case for advocating it with policymakers, regulatory bodies, asking for legislations that would lead to promote the adoption of the policies that support nature-based solutions. And these policies could be implemented on a national level and regionally and globally. We would also like to see more of monitoring and reporting. I think this is also very important. So not just for the members to implement the nature-based solutions, best practices and success stories and recommendations we have in the playbook. It is very important for us to get some feedback. And the playbook being the living document we want it to be, it's important that for us to develop it, we need to get the feedback. So once the recommendations start going into implementations by our members, we would like to see the impact of these implementations. We want them to monitor it, to give us some feedback. And it's also very important for us to help us develop metrics and reporting mechanisms. One of the reasons why as well, I think the incentives that brought the development of the playbook is that the co-benefits are not understood. The benefits are not understood because they are not quantifiable. So the only way we can quantify them and measure them and have them to be scalable is that we try them and we develop metrics. We monitor, report the impact, we develop metrics, and the only way we can do that is by the feedback we get from the members, by the feedback we get from all the stakeholders who revert to the recommendations in the playbook. As it's not just a document, it's we would love it to be a catalyst for change, and by adapting the practices and promoting the knowledge and advocating for the supportive policies and legislations that we want. As Alfredo was saying at the beginning, the infrastructure sector is one of the most heavily funded sectors globally. We need the money, we need the funds, but in order to do that, we need to have a strong base to ask for the legislation and to ask for and to advocate for it. And we believe that the playbook plays a great role in this aspect, and we would love to see it pushed forward by our members and all the stakeholders involved. Thank you.
Goodness, that was a very comprehensive response. Thank you, Basma. There's a lot of things for people to think about there, and you've really set out a clear agenda for FIDIC members around the world to take this on board and put it into practice. You touched on policy, you touched on finance, you touched on investment, and we know that FIDIC has, if you like, touch points with these with the financial world, with the policy world in the many different countries that it serves through the membership system. So we know you'll be alongside us as we're doing our advocacy and our work to promote the playbook. So thank you for those really insightful comments. I'm just going to do a quick fire round now with this wonderful group of people. We're going to go Evan, Emily, Basma, and then I'm going to come to Mr. Taka, who I think his video wasn't working at the beginning, so wasn't able to introduce himself, but I'm going to ask Taka to make some reflections, and Kate too from USAID, and then we'll open up to have some conversation with the audience too. So Evan, I think you've probably heard some thoughts ad hoc or on the side from Emily and Basma already about where the playbook could go next. What are your thoughts from WWF's perspective about what needs to happen next, and not just iterations of the playbook, but the broader nature and infrastructure agenda, perhaps through the MOU with FIDIC that can be a leverage. But what are your thoughts on the next steps?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, so many great comments, Emily and Basma. I always appreciate hearing those thoughts. It makes me feel like we have so much more to do. And a couple of quick reflections, and I say that in a very positive way. The playbook really feels like, as Emily rightly suggested, a guidepost, right? It's a small contribution to a growing portfolio of literature, of documentation, of tools, et cetera, to help steer this conversation in the right direction. Three quick takeaways. First, as a conservation practitioner, infrastructure is in its very nature a complicated, certainly not a monolithic process. There are lots of actors involved at various stages, from design and policy, procurement, financing, et cetera. The conservation community has often very much been on the outside of the infrastructure development lifecycle. This effort, and in the form of the playbook, but I think more importantly, perhaps the engagement or relationship between FIDIC and WWF, I'd like to think is a demonstration of how to break down some of these silos, how to involve the conservation community in early stage decisions about integrating nature and biodiversity related considerations and climate considerations into infrastructure development and infrastructure planning. It demystifies perhaps a little bit of the process, right? And having these types of communities engaging and working together and using tools like the playbook to support new and innovative approaches, to infrastructure development is sort of the guidepost, right? And again, I hope the playbook can contribute to that. The other two quick thoughts, and Basma alluded to both of these, that are tough nuts to crack, but I think that we need to really keep working on, and that we see as we've been discussing the playbook and sort of out in the sustainable infrastructure world, is financing, figuring out how to make the case, the economic case, the financial case for nature positive infrastructure and nature-based solutions. If we can demonstrate value, quantify it, and measure it, I think we can move money off the sidelines into these new approaches. But until we have some of those cases demonstrated, I think there's hesitancy and reluctance to put money into non-traditional solutions. But that has to change, particularly in the global South. There's a huge need for delivery of infrastructure services, and the private sector is going to have to complement public sector financing to deliver those services. And we can do so in a way, and we can utilize some of this innovation to create new non-traditional forms of infrastructure service delivery. And we just need to do a better job of quantifying and cataloging those efforts in a way to demonstrate to the finance community that there is opportunity to put money into nature positive approaches. Regulation, reporting, the regulatory environments are changing, and so I think financiers are moving in this direction, but it's slow. And I'd like to think that in the next decade or so, we're going to see continued pressure put on financiers to think about different ways and innovative ways to finance more sustainable solutions to infrastructure development. And that ties to the last point, which is procurement. We need to work on ways to incorporate and advantage nature and nature positive approaches into infrastructure procurement. So all of this is great until it's codified in a contract document or a tender document. And we then tend to revert to traditional means and measures for buying infrastructure services, and actually laying that infrastructure onto or into the ground. So FIDIC is a real champion of procurement through their forms of contract. I mean, they are the standard setters for buying infrastructure and infrastructure services globally. And if we can start to use language that we use in the playbook and that are used by our various communities to influence the way infrastructure is procured, I think we'll see a major shift in the type of infrastructure that's being deployed in the places that most needs it. So 3 quick reflections there, Robert, thanks. And again, it suggests to me that there's a whole lot of exciting work for us to keep doing in the future.
Absolutely. Evan, thanks so much for those reflections. I think there's already a sort of a potential path forward crystallizing there, and I can see the MOU, the partnership between FIDIC and WWF has got a lot of track to run yet. Emily, getting practical for a second here. I just want to sort of you empathized earlier with the infrastructure engineer or the engineer practitioner looking at the optionality here in terms of nature positive. If the client hasn't really spelt it out in the specification, but you've got a committed engineer who thinks actually, from what I've read, this could really lend itself to a nature-based solution or a nature positive insight. What would you recommend in terms of next steps, and perhaps using the playbook, as a handrail, as Evan said? But how do you think that the engineering practitioner can take a step forward?
Oh, great question. Yeah. I think coming from a kind of consultancy or kind of like technical service kind of provision kind of background, it's our responsibility to be able to kind of advise our clients on the best approaches to take. So if a client hasn't stipulated it or kind of requested it in their TOR or the specification documentation that they've released, I think it's something we should definitely be bringing to their kind of to the forefront and kind of like presenting it as a solution to help them to make our clients aware of what additional solutions there are available. I think one of the exciting kind of learnings for us was the types of solutions, there are so many different types of nature-based and nature positive infrastructure solutions out there. Some of them may be more from a kind of some of them may be more in kind of a kind of theoretical kind of like design kind of side at the moment, rather than kind of being able to demonstrate kind of actual implementation. But yeah, I completely agree with that suggestion, Robert. I think we should definitely be highlighting it to our clients, taking it forward for them, because that's the only way that we're really going to kind of be driving change. And as the technical advisors, it's our, sorry, repeating myself a little bit now, but it's our responsibility to be able to kind of like bring the best solution forward. So yeah, use the playbook to come up or brainstorm ideas, or think of different and new ways of kind of delivering a certain design, no matter kind of what sector you're working in. There will be a greener solution available.
I think you're right. I think practitioners and engineers in the infrastructure sector shouldn't be shy of actually, get the guidance, put it on the desk, put it on the table, and have a discussion around it with the client, with the project owner, with the contractor. It's got FIDIC and WWF's name on it. 2 big global names in this world. Let's leverage that. Let's have the engineering practitioners feel empowered by this document to really advocate in the way, Basma, you were talking about advocacy quite a bit. I think let's really leverage this document for all it's worth over the next months and years to really make that case. And Basma, I'll come to you for a final quick round with yourself. You might want to pick up on some of Emily's points or Evan's points, but I think what I really wanted to understand is what channels or tools or sort of levers within FIDIC can we use to embed the nature positive infrastructure playbook more effectively? I think Evan was certainly talking to sort of the power of the contract, the power of procurement. Emily really saying we need the engineers to feel empowered to act as advocates in the negotiating room, in the workshops around design specification, and setting the brief. What do you think?
Well, I would just build up with what Evan and Emily were saying. It's advocacy is very important, pushing for advocating for legislations and having an ongoing relationship with the regulatory bodies so that we can embed the policies that we need in the contracts that we use. And this is also why the contracts are very important. In order to be able to embed those policies in the contracts, we will have to have a strong case. Which thanks to Emily, we have the great evidence-based cases that helps us to have a strong case when we're advocating for legislation. And another also point that I would like to make, and I know that it is a very important tool with FIDIC, is for the academy as well. And this is a big part of knowledge building and for capacity building in order to be able to implement those nature positive infrastructure policies. We need to build on the capacities and to give the tools for our members and for different stakeholders to empower their teams and their stakeholders with the knowledge to be able to implement the recommendations that we give. So if we give them a tool of a playbook and they don't know how to use it, then we're not really helping them much. Here comes the role of the academy, and we have a very strong notion of building on courses, and we want to actually change the playbook into a knowledge tool through the courses we implement and we develop at the FIDIC Academy. We've already worked on a few blueprints that we want to use, so we can use this as a tool for a platform to encourage our stakeholders and our members to have a strong foundation for capacity building, to be able to use the playbook in the most efficient and effective way that we want it to be. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, plenty to think about and take away there, folks. You've heard it straight there. Look, that brings us to the close of the panel discussion. I'd like to offer my thanks to Evan and Emily and Basma for really taking the time. You know, your passion comes through when you talk about this subject. I certainly feel energized by that, and I know that there's a lot of people around this call and listening in, hopefully, who want to make this work. So let's take that positive energy and make it happen on the ground. I want to come now to some remarks and reflections on the discussion so far from two people. I'm going to come first to Mr. Thakur Sharma. Thakur, you are the president of SCAEF. I know you had a couple of IT problems at the beginning, so we couldn't give you a proper introductory time at the beginning. So hopefully you can take a moment now to introduce yourself properly to the audience before getting into your reflections. And after you've finished, I'll come to Mary from USAID as well. So Thakur, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Sorry that I could not, some technical hitch on my side. I am Thakur Sharma, as you already know, and I am currently president of, we call it SCAF Nepal. It's a Society of Consulting Architecture and Engineering Firms. We have around 275 member firms attached to us. We are Nepal's member association to FIDIC and also a member of FIDIC Asia Pacific. This is my short introduction. Do you want me to talk to whatever the discussion panel people did today?
Yeah. I think in the context of the Nepal market, you know, what's realistic here? What can folks take away and focus on from what they've heard from the panel?
But I think we heard most of nature friendly, nature positive, nature based solutions. Basically, the focus was more discussion was most focused on this discussion. As you know, there's always a conflict between the engineers and the conservationists. Always a conflict. Like engineers do want to build infrastructure, whereas conservationists want to preserve the nature. So there's always a conflict. The same issue is here also in Nepal. If you see the map of Nepal, it's around 1,000 kilometer east-west and around 200 kilometers north-south. So within this reach, we have a different kind of flora and fauna and different lots of natural reserves, natural parks, reserve parks, and all. So any kind of infrastructure that we build, any kind of linear infrastructure we plan or we intend to build is definitely is going to cross any of the natural reserves, natural parks which are reserved, or any big forest area, different kind of forest area. Like if you know the data that around 44% of our land is covered by forest. So whenever we do any kind of infrastructure, we come across these kind of hurdles. So coming back to the legislation part, recently government of Nepal has introduced directives on how to build a nature friendly linear infrastructure going through all these kind parks and forest, and also that's a good positive point. But going back again is that it also needs competent engineers and technical people to design these nature based solutions or nature friendly solutions, nature positive solutions, whatever you call it. There are, as I think Emily mentioned, about uh, incorporation of these things in the terms of reference. I think last year, recently, we had one experience. One of the World Bank funded project had called for a design or upgrading of the existing national highway. There was one paragraph on study on the wildlife and providing wildlife friendly infrastructure. But to the contrary, there was no input of the experts required for that. Even there was no input of the wildlife expert. We raised this issue during the previous session, but the client was reluctant to add any experts or also provide any resources to study those kind of issues or collection data. They have given a comprehensive issue. Okay, you have to put cameras and capture data capture, all those issues, but there was no any resources. So in that context, though we raised it, it didn't happen. Even in their response, it was not properly addressed. So eventually, I think for some reason it got cancelled. Hopefully, in the next call, I think they will address all these issues. So that is one. So in Nepal, in the context of Nepal, most of the large infrastructures are funded by either ADB or World Bank, or lately with the USAID, MCC, and all this kind. So I think all this, I think FIDIC has already has a MOU with World Bank and ADB. So I think if FIDIC plays a positive roles in incorporating the lacunas in the terms of reference, then I think that will be a starting point for us to see. And so that is just one part that I mentioned. The other part is, see, like we engineers, most of the engineers in our curriculum, this thing in the engineering curriculum, these are not part of the curriculum. Linear infrastructure or nature-based solutions or nature-friendly solution, nature positive. I think we should, for the coming engineers for future, we should start from the academia also to introduce this kind of courses in there. So I think SCAF has worked with one of the University of Nepal to introduce this, along with the WWF Nepal, with aligned team, has facilitated in getting us to that core, because SCAF, we call it as a knowledge-based society. So we have putting our effort on that. So that is another thing, education. Then another part, recently we had two projects, one along one major highway and another a railway project. So that in that also there was initially there was no option to study this nature-based solution or nature-friendly infrastructure crossing the national parks. So there during the study these things came up, and ADB has to independently hire a third party, another consultant to study that, and their solution was so costly. It was very difficult for the government of Nepal to to accept that. And I think in the later stage there were some negotiations and to do that, how to bring down the cost. Similarly, there was a case in railway project where my own firm was involved. We didn't know what kind of solutions we are to be there for elephants and all. What could be the the height of the overbridge or the this thing. So there was no guidelines, no proper the technical reports, technical guidelines, all those kind of things. That was a year back before this FIDIC playbook came. We were in constant touch with the WWF Nepal team. They had given us some solutions, some advices, so we followed that. Again, it's coming to the country like Nepal, developing country, which is which the infrastructure are very poor still. Going through this, if the infrastructure, nature positive infrastructures are going to be very costly, then it will be really an issue for the government Nepal to come up with the financing. So I think this is what I can share for now. I think we have been really working with the WWF Nepal, with Align project. They had come a year or so back with us to explore the opportunity, to see where we can give some input to them on the Align project. So there were a lot of discussion. Then we said, okay, discussing a lot of things may not help. Let's do one memorandum of understanding. So we were the first member association under the FIDIC to do a MOU with WWF Nepal for a long sustainable, infrastructure development. So I think this is what I can summarize for now. Thank you.
Taco, that's super helpful. Actually, that really gave us some insights into the local context. So the challenges with respect to the brief and the specification, challenges with respect to the business case or the funding and the cost, and you really brought that to life in terms of the local actors on the ground. So I think stuff to reflect on there, and clearly an ongoing role for FIDIC and WWF and USA to leverage some of their expertise. I really liked your point about the academic insight, so bringing that in early on with the engineering profession, so that it's more like a business as usual rather than something unusual or an add-on. I think that makes a lot of sense, and then I think that will seem more naturally the way to do things. Hopefully during that time we also get the costs down or make the business case better or have more funding coming in, so that those items balance out effectively on the ground. We get good implementation. Taco, thanks once again for your insights. Appreciate that. And with that, before opening up to questions and answers, we'll hear from USAID's representative, Kate. If you want to come on, Kate.
Hey there, Robert. Good day to everyone. This is Mary Melnick. I sit in the Asia Bureau at USAID, and I lead the Division for Environmental Security.
I'm sorry for calling you
and
Kate.
Resilience.
I've written it down, Kate.
We work together all the time.
Yeah.
And we both have glasses on.
I apologize,
and
Mary.
It's
Mary,
quite a
you go ahead.
compliment to be called Kate because she's very eloquent and knowledgeable. I would like
Mary,
just to cover the big, small, and the you in this presentation. First, big thanks, big congratulations to FIDIC and WWF in bringing together what I call the conservation and construction communities. USAID plays different roles and hats. On the one hand, everyone is familiar with USAID as a grant-making institution of the United States government for international development, and we fund projects such as Align. We also are one of the biggest funders for biodiversity conservation. And from where I sit, we were supporting initiatives like the Global Snow Leopard Initiative, the Global Tiger Initiative, and congratulations to Asian governments for delineating very large conservation landscapes. Another role of USAID is to actually review the US government funding to the multilateral development banks. And what we were seeing were that roads, rail lines were going through these conservation landscapes and through Asia's last great areas of nature. So the question out there 10 years or so ago is, how do you bring these two communities together? Because it's certain the engineers don't know that the government's already delineated this as a conservation landscape, and the two are not talking. So a big congratulations for these their initial steps. They're big steps, and there's a lot further to go with the playbook and our work together on this. And just to talk about the big, Dr. Neil Carter of the University of Michigan has quantified that 24,000 kilometers of linear infrastructure are planned in tiger conservation landscapes. And so that's like 6 highways from Boston to Seattle. So the challenge is great. Now back down to the next level. Mr. Takar, thank you so much for describing for us the local challenges and the conflicts between conservation and infrastructure development. And we know they don't have to be that way. The playbook is beginning to illustrate and illuminate and to guide people to show that you can have both conservation and infrastructure development at the same time. Now that leads you to the you and the us. I would like to just use this time to not only thank the South Asia Network, sorry, the SCEF, but also to call all of you to partner with FIDIC, Align, USAID to advance and go to scale throughout Asia and eventually the globe on these issues. And I'd like to note that you, those on the call right now, and those who will be listening to the recording, do have a very active role to play, and your voice counts in bringing up the importance of nature-friendly infrastructure and the types of solutions that are described in the playbook. With that, I'll say thank you to all and onward for the road ahead.
Mary, thank you so much for those remarks from USAID and the Align project. Well, we're now in the final furlong of our webinar, and I'm opening up the channel to questions. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can just write it in the chat, I'll see it and read it out. If you don't feel comfortable coming off mic and coming on camera and that kind of thing, but if you do, then just put your hand up in the usual way, or just come on screen, and we'll see what we can see. If I don't see any, then I, of course, as any good moderator does, I do have a few questions up my sleeve for the panelists. And I'm just scanning. If anyone spotted a question that I've missed, then please just shout out. One of the things that I wanted to get into that I don't think we've talked perhaps enough on in this session is value capture. I think this links to finance. I think it links to business case. And I know some people feel uncomfortable still about monetizing or valuing nature in one way or another. But I think, we're getting used to the fact that if we want to compare apples with apples and have nature infrastructure on a spreadsheet, on an accountant's sheet, in the same way as we have other aspects of infrastructure, hard infrastructure assets, traditional assets, then we need to sort of get good at accounting for natural systems. So I'll come to you, Emily. Do you got any thoughts on, you and your team, you do a little bit of natural capital accounting on the side, I understand. Just kidding. So does natural capital accounting and assessment play a part here in making the case for nature positive infrastructure or nature-based solutions?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you mentioned, natural capital is a really valuable tool at presenting a project or a infrastructure solution in a term or a way that financially minded colleagues or stakeholders will understand or be able to kind of review a type of project. I think there's a lot of kind of methodologies out there. So the Natural Capital Coalition, I think, is been quite pioneering in developing methodologies, and they've worked with accountancy firms to make sure that there's kind of terminology kind of alignment as well, because that's kind of one of the first steps of a breakdown in communication is just, everyone not kind of talking about the same thing. So definitely, I think it's definitely the way forward, and a lot more work needs to go into kind of developing the methodologies, making sure that everyone is aligned with the same methodologies for valuing the benefits from nature positive infrastructure solutions. As if we're going to make the kind of monumental kind of change that we need, we're going to need the kind of financial support from the financial community that is stuck in their ways a little bit. We definitely need kind of further work to go in, and our team have worked with clients on kind of putting a value on nature. The UK is quite pioneering in biodiversity net gain, which is a quite focus on valuing, but it's a different mechanism of kind of quantifying kind of the benefits from nature. So if anyone isn't kind of familiar with that, I'd highly recommend kind of looking on the UK government website and seeing, kind of reading up more about that. This could be a mechanism and tool that governments use to start to kind of mandate as part of kind of new infrastructure designs. So yeah, I very much agree with that point, Robert. I think it's a lot more work needs to go into this space, and it's going to be kind of one of the key mechanisms to help create this kind of shift towards kind of greener solutions as part of our standard approaches.
Fantastic, Emily. Thanks for adding some extra light on that. Clearly, we need to scale up that ability to do natural capital accounts. As I say, I think it's part of the sort of baselining for any kind of nature positive infrastructure financing agreement or business case. But we're actually getting some questions coming in on the chat now. Thank you, folks, for typing in. We've got a point here from Pramod Newpain. He's saying that, or she, forgive me, is saying that we wish you to conduct a run-through session on using the playbook on a webinar session with WWF India and Consulting Engineers Association of India. So that's exciting. So the advocacy is working. We're already scaling up, and we're getting opportunities here. So Pramod, thanks for sending that through. That's something that we'll definitely follow up on with our colleagues. And then Sandesh Gavada has got in touch to say how to improve the visibility of sustainable development documents like this playbook, since less technical documentation is available. I don't know, Basma or Evan, do you want to take that one? I think that's about, comes back to some of the points around academy, around advocacy, around visibility and accessibility of some of this guidance, so that we start changing people's minds. Basma, I'll come to you first, and then Evan, perhaps.
Working now very closely to digitize the playbook, and I think is leveraging on a digital platform is a very important tool, so that it would be available for everyone. Also, I think that having the webinars is an important tool as well. And we do have like a teaser on our website. So if anyone would check the website also with the climate change charter, we're starting to work on this, and very soon we're going to be having a digital form and of the playbook. And I think this is very important to get the feedback, as it being the living document we want it to be, and wanting it to be a document that we can always develop, and getting the feedback directly from different stakeholders, from the members of FIDIC and non-members as well. This will be done easily through the digitized format that we're going to have it for the playbook coming live very soon. And it's something that we're currently working on. So I think we're on the right track with that. Evan, do you want to add something?
Thanks, Basma. I think you've said it well. I will quote the FIDIC tagline, which is the voice of the consulting engineering community. So I would encourage FIDIC members to approach FIDIC in whichever way possible to illustrate how this playbook is or isn't working out in the world, and how you'd like to receive that information. I think there are lots of options for dissemination, from traditional hard copy through to, as Basma saying, a very dynamic, very interactive digital approach. And I hope we can touch all of those. Engineers will use this differently. Practitioners will use this differently. Over time, this will hopefully evolve into a number of different formats, so that it's as accessible as possible to the greatest number of people and practitioners as possible. But use FIDIC. It's there to represent you as the engineering community and to get you the information that you need. And by the same token, use WWF and your conservation organizations out in the field to to help support and disseminate this type of information and give us some information as to whether or not you want some more technical and more detailed information, or less technical and sort of higher level. But we certainly are open to those suggestions as we move forward in future versions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Evan. I'm just looking at the chat. Definitely, there seems to be some hunger for more of a sort of technical manual, if you like, for the engineering community that goes much deeper. It feels on the on some of the technical specifications for these nature-based solutions. And I'm sure that's something that will get developed over time. But making no promises for having one on the shelf tomorrow morning. But it definitely, I think, as more nature-based solutions get scaled and you have more replicability, then you're able to start then developing technical manuals, because you have repeated cases of how the knowledge has been developed and how the project is performing.
Can I just
we got
add
go on, Emily. Yeah,
sorry, just on the point that you just mentioned, I think we need the information kind of publicly available in order to kind of build these case studies, to build these kind of manuals. So it's sort of a plea to the members on this webinar as well, that if you are delivering something or implementing an innovative project, like, please do try and kind of publicize kind of more information about it, make the documentation available so that others can replicate it, within your geography, but also elsewhere in the world. And so also, like, consultants like us can pick it up and be able to promote it as well, because that's one of the biggest issues we had, was just kind of accessing information, because we know stuff is happening, but we're just not at the stage to kind of, organizations aren't at the stage to kind of publish it. So please actively share, and we'll pick it up.
Thanks, Emily. Sandesh has responded positively to the coverage on his question. Thanks for that. Jay Prakash Singh's got in touch to say, how do we convince legislators of developing countries like Nepal to incorporate nature in development, especially when it's always been a debate that less developed countries do have the right to develop on their own? Well, clearly, we would all agree that that's the case. And again, it comes back to the advocacy piece, I think, in terms of an awareness raising with the legislators in Nepal, to support them as they put some of these relatively new concepts like nature positive infrastructure and nature-based solutions into policy and regulatory requirements. So I think there's certainly some work to do there. I am conscious of time, folks. We've been on the phone together and on our screens for getting on for an hour and a half. Our time is up, and so as the moderator, I'm responsible for closing the session. So I need to thank all our contributors to the call, namely Alfredo and Sudhir and Kate from the first half of the session, and Evan and Emily and Basma from the discussion, and of course Thakur and Mary from the closing remarks after the panel. And also thank you, audience, for engaging and giving us some questions and some thoughts to think about with respect to reflecting on next steps and action on the ground. So it's been my pleasure to host the webinar and moderate the discussions. I think we've come a long way just in 90 minutes, but also figuratively speaking, since we started this work together, since FIDIC and WWF and USAID and everyone, the level of collaboration is really taking on a new quality, I think, that we've not seen before around nature and infrastructure. So that's a really positive thing to take away from the webinar. And of course, everyone who's been speaking is an advocate and an ambassador in their own right. We all like to help where we can, so do get in touch with us if there's something that you think we can support that you've heard about during this process. So WWF, USAID, and FIDIC, we'll now close the webinar. Thank you for your participation.